So yet to I have yet to hop on the show and give my take on Brian Flores and yes, the courageous risk that Brian Flores is taking filing a massive lawsuit against the Miami Dolphins, the Denver Broncos, the National Football League. I haven't unpacked it. I haven't given you my take in front of a camera, on a microphone, recorded live. I've definitely given you my take in shows with previous guests in regards to the hiring and firing process that lies within the National Football League in 2022 as we sit here right now. All I will continue to do, as I like to do on this show, is lay down facts that support my opinions. And the facts that support my opinions are simple facts that are undeniable facts that motivate a man like Brian Flores to go down this road that will be a long, arduous, winding road that Brian Flores realistically could have sealed his fate as far as the end of his coaching career in the National Football League, no matter how this shakes out. Whether this lawsuit is filed and Flores, quote unquote, wins the lawsuit, what does that even mean, winning the lawsuit? What does that even mean when at the end of the day, his NFL career as a coach will never be the same? This is a life-changing, courageous, career-turning decision made by a man that I do not believe, in my heart of hearts, should have been fired by the Miami Dolphins. And when Brian Flores was fired by the Miami Dolphins, I was a man sitting here as a white man saying, that's interesting. Why is this NFL team deciding to go down this road when this is a man that brought consistent success, consistent progress through success over the course of his time as the National Football League head coach for the Miami Dolphins? And going back to the beginning of this whole thing, in order to take two steps forward, you got to go a couple steps back in terms of analyzing this and explaining it for the folks at home. The National Football League instituted the Rooney Rule, which requires each and every NFL team, I should say, to interview a candidate from a minority. That is how the rule is stated, and that is how the rule has been enacted, I should say, since 2003. And since 2003, we're sitting here now, 2022. There are 32 teams in the National Football League, and only one of those teams, as it stands currently, has a head coach of African-American heritage, and Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've seen coaches fired like Brian Flores, fired after 3 years on the job with consistent success, progressive success. We have seen a coach by the name of David Culley hired a year ago and fired 1 year later in a no-win situation, taking the job of the Houston Texans head coaching post, where the Texans were largely assumed to be a basement-dwelling team this year, and they won 4 games with one of the worst rosters assembled in the last quarter century in the National Football League. No Deshaun Watson. He had his stuff off the field. Deshaun Watson not out there. Tyrod Taylor / Davis Mills out there for David Culley in his one-and-done season, his one-and-done campaign for the Houston Texans. I also offer you these theories, and you guys ask yourselves as white men why the league is racist, or how is the league racist. The New York Football Giants, in their 100-plus year history, have never had an African-American head coach. Not one. We are talking about something that is most definitely eye-opening, and the most eye-opening facet of this massive potentially league-altering lawsuit is the simple fact that Brian Flores is alleging that Dolphins owner Stephen Ross sent out payments to him, a payment proposal to Brian Flores, that if in fact the Miami Dolphins lost some games, per loss, Stephen Ross, as the owner of the Miami Dolphins, would hand Brian Flores a check for $100,000 for each loss that Flores accrued as the head coach of the Dolphins that season. If that is true, if that is found to be true, Stephen Ross should not only lose his ownership of the Dolphins, but a league-wide investigation on any activity such as this across all owners within the league has to be conducted, which means Jerry Jones under investigation, Robert Kraft under investigation, Terry Pagula under investigation. I'm just naming names here of owners that are in the league. You have to take a deep-rooted look at this league to find out why. If you're going to investigate one team in the Washington Commanders now and find John Gruden guilty of horrible emails that were horrible, getting him out of the league, you have to do it with everyone. And you also have a league made up of 32 teams with one African-American head coach, and that head coach is in Pittsburgh, of course. That head coach is one of the greatest head coaches of his era, and dare I say it, if that head coach by the name of Mike Tomlin was white, I feel like he'd get a lot more credit. Despite the progressive change that we've seen as a society over the course of the last 10, 15 years, one thing remains: very little change has actually happened within the coaching ranks of the National Football League, and it's a real shame. I cannot sit here and pretend to walk a mile in their shoes, being who I am, but I can be sympathetic and empathetic and recognize that there is a problem in this football league. There is a problem in today's National Football League. We have plenty of coaches that have been hired over the course of this offseason alone, that there are other candidates available for these jobs that were never interviewed and obviously that were not hired. And we're entering into a season where we have seen plenty of head coaching and front office changes. The Chicago Bears departing coach Matt Nagy is gone. He's replaced with Matt Eberflus. Eberflus spent the previous 4 years with the Indianapolis Colts as the defensive coordinator, and this is his first head coaching position. A white head coach. Denver Broncos go from Vic Fangio to Nathaniel Hackett. Fangio was fired on January 9th after 3 seasons with the Broncos. During his tenure, the Broncos were 19-30 with no playoff appearances. Hackett, who spent the previous 3 seasons as the Green Bay Packers offensive coordinator, was hired on January 27th. This, as well, is his first head coaching position. The Houston Texans fired David Culley. The Houston Texans have not hired a new head coach as of this very minute. David Culley was fired on January 13th after 1 season, as I mentioned, with the Houston Texans, finishing with a 4-13 record, and of course missing the playoffs. The one case I can bring to the table as recently as today is that the Jacksonville Jaguars announced that they did in fact hire former Super Bowl winning head coach Doug Peterson as their new head coach. Gone are the days of Urban Meyer in the rearview mirror. Thank God for that franchise, that Urban Meyer is as far away from that building as possible, because he was a complete and total disaster. You want to read the handbook on how to not be an NFL head coach in 1 season. Urban Meyer wrote it, perfected it, and hopefully we never hear from him again as a coach with how bad he was. Technically, you could say Doug Peterson is replacing Darrell Bevell, I should say, because Bevell took over in the interim basis for Meyer. I'll give him credit for that. The Jags were 2-11 this year. Bevell came in, the team's offensive coordinator, promoted to the interim head coaching position, and finished the 2021 season with a 1-3 record. But Peterson comes with a pedigree. I can say that those previous coaches, I can't necessarily say that they deserved the head coaching position as much as Eric Bieniemy, who is an African-American offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, who has helped revolutionize that offense with Patrick Mahomes, with the help, of course, of Andy Reid, being in Andy Reid's coaching tree. Brian Flores is another head coaching candidate that should have been named as a head coach, I think, in this league and shouldn't have been fired. And another head coaching candidate that I was really pulling for was former Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Byron Leftwich, who I had hoped would get an opportunity with Jacksonville, or maybe he'll get an opportunity with another team. I think he's done a brilliant job with the Tampa Bay Bucks, regardless as to whether or not they have Brady or not. They've made the most of the talent that they have. That's all you can ask for from a coach. The Las Vegas Raiders obviously didn't bring back Rich Bisaccia, but they did bring in Josh McDaniels. McDaniels, a former head coach of the Denver Broncos. McDaniels has a full, solid resume, so I'm not going to nitpick that one too much. But here as it stands, Brian Flores fired by the Miami Dolphins after going 24-25. No playoff appearances, but 3 seasons, 24-25, with a very bad Miami Dolphins team. Mike Zimmer fired by the Minnesota Vikings, and it is believed that they will be hiring their new head coach, I believe by the name of Kevin O'Connell, who is the offensive coordinator for the LA Rams. And it's not about white head coaches over. I'm not saying that these coaches don't deserve these jobs, but there are other candidates that were never interviewed for this job, for these jobs, that should be. The New Orleans Saints have a vacancy. The New York Giants hired Brian Dable. So the only vacancies that are left are New Orleans, Miami, and obviously Houston. Minnesota hasn't stated who their next head coach could be in an official sense, but this is a league-changing moment, and this is a moment that I think should provide everyone with that little bit of pause, a step back to say, hey, Brian Flores might be onto something here, and we don't know until the investigation is completed whether these accusations by Flores are true. But if you take a step back and say, okay, let's ponder this and say whether this is true or not. Stephen Ross, could he have done this? Could he have asked for this? These owners are not the best, quote unquote, people. They're businessmen. They found themselves in these successful situations based on the business practices that they conducted, climbing the business ladder. Business is not made up of a bunch of nice guys. If it was, it wouldn't be called business. It would be called charity. So I think Brian Flores is courageous for doing this. You want to talk about some courageous acts in the course of sports history, and we could go all the way back to the days of Jackie Robinson suiting up for the Brooklyn Dodgers back in the day. That's a situation that obviously lends it to itself as far as being courageous, right? But Brian Flores, what he's doing is beyond Colin Kaepernick, is beyond the playing field. It is within the structure of the shield that it's not being a racist. It is systemic racism within the hiring and firing process within the National Football League that is historically, factually undeniable over the course of the NFL's time. We have had plenty of moments, franchises like the Oakland Raiders back in the day that changed the game with guys like Art Shell. The Pittsburgh Steelers have continued to revolutionize the game with Mike Tomlin, and Mike Tomlin is a Hall of Fame coach, in my opinion. I think he's going to be in Canton one day. But for far too long, Mike Tomlin has been one of 3, one of 2, one of 1 now, as far as a head coach in the National Football League. This is the story of the offseason. Forget Aaron Rodgers as to whether or not he'll go stay in Green Bay or go to a new team. Forget all that. Brian Flores and the result of this lawsuit is the biggest story of this National Football League offseason. We have to tune in. We have to be educated. We have to do better to open our minds. Rather than being ignorant, let's be intelligent. And I posted a status on my Facebook that got a lot of love, and I wasn't doing it for those reasons. I want to make this clear too. I've had people disagree with me on this because of their own views and things like that, and that's fine. I don't care whether people fully agree with me or disagree with me on any of the topics that I bring about. I just bring about the topics that I want to discuss. And you guys tune in and let me know if you agree or disagree, or throw in your own take. That's what I want. That's what I expect. Right? Brian Flores is a guy that I think is being honest with his accusation. For the record, I will say this again. For the record, I am 100% on the side of Brian Flores. File the lawsuit, go to war with the shield that never loses. Can't name a court case the NFL lost. Prove a point, only the ignorant neglect to see for the price of the coaching career that you had worked twice as hard to achieve than someone of Caucasian ethnicity. Much respect. The Billionaires Club that makes up the NFL ownership group, up to 32 white men that are the bosses of a league that features 70% of an African American population. 32 teams in the league and only one African American head coach. If you don't see between those lines, it's not because you can, it's because you don't want to. And it's not saying that these people are racist. It's that it's a systemic racism problem. It's that these people, these owners, don't believe that a black man could lead young white or black men. And there's a moment where I go back to in my upbringing and playing the game at a young age, 7, 8 years old, where you're playing Pop Warner football, you're learning how to socialize with others, whether they're black, white, brown, no matter who they are, where they come from. You're learning how to socialize. You're learning how to create camaraderie. You're learning how to be a teammate. You're learning how to be a friend. You're learning how to be a part of something. And one of the first things that we did as a team, we went out to the movies. We went out and saw Remember the Titans. That movie changed my life as far as how I view athletics, as far as how I view friendships, teammates, cultivating those friendships, cultivating those teammate friendships. That's a movie that apparently the 32 owners within the National Football League need to watch that movie. The 32 GMs within the league that are looking to hire a coach need to watch that movie. We have great coaches in this game that come from all different sorts of backgrounds. Each one of them deserves an equal opportunity to achieve their dream of becoming an NFL head coach. And Brian Flores is putting a spotlight on this that is long, long overdue. Big ups to Brian Flores for this courageous risk, filing this lawsuit and making this the top story of the NFL offseason. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. And of course, subscribe.